Hi, it's Bumbleberry. Welcome back to Seduce Me Too. So hopefully we don't catch on fire today. We're just pressed against a warm chest, one whose arms I adored to be in. The nightmare plagued my thoughts, but my heart fluttered in reality, knowing that what I was feeling in the physical world was what I was supposed to care about. Oh, hi, Naked Sam, as usual. I looked up at Sam's sleeping face, giggling at the sight of his messy bed hair. Sam slowly woke from the sound of my laughter, blinking the sleep away to stare down at me.
Morning.
That was aggressive. Good morning. I smiled and kissed Sam on the lips to help rouse him, only to end up being pulled into a tight and loving embrace with my head buried in his shoulder.
Did you sleep okay?
Oh, I slept great, baby doll. No. The second time, yeah. Sam nodded in understanding against my shoulder as I wrapped my arms around him. I felt so warm and safe within the confines of his embrace that the thoughts of the nightmare I had vanished from my mind. It would come back, but it was gone for now. Well, I guess we have to kiss him again, otherwise he'll think we don't love him and we'll die a fiery death. I pulled back a bit and kissed Sam once again, smiling happily and running my fingers along his back. Sam gently squeezed me and kissed me back, melting into the embrace between us. Morning kisses with Sam felt wonderful, and I didn't want to get up or pull away. I simply desired to relish in the feelings I had for Sam and let him completely take over my thoughts. Hey.
Since we're in the demon world, do you think that maybe...
No, we're not going to do that. I opened my eyes and looked over his shoulder, trying to understand what he was insinuating. When it finally came to me, I held my breath in realization. The demon marriage?
You don't have to decide right now, but before we go back, maybe think about it?
I mean, do you not understand that I have a human soul and you are a demon soul? Like, what is going to happen? I'll think about it. Sam nodded in understanding, kissing my shoulder. I knew it was something Sam really wanted, but was it something I was willing to go through? Yeah, no one's told me any details. And what are these things about angels? Why would they attack demons? I don't explain. Explain yourself. Sam gently loosened his embrace and pulled away to look at me with a tired smile.
I don't want to get up yet.
Me neither. I laughed, knowing this was how Sam operated in the morning. He was definitely not a morning person, so seeing him curl up to me and ask permission to stay in bed was still an endearing sight that reminded me of how much I loved him. My heart warmed as I smiled and kissed his forehead. Then we don't have to. We can sleep a little longer if we want. Sam smiled and closed his eyes, pulling me against his chest with a hearty chuckle.
Good. We can go eat later.
Once our peace was broken, unfortunately, by the sound of knocking at our door. Sam and I let out simultaneous groans. Our plan was ruined.
Go away!
Yeah.
Sam, we brought breakfast.
Oh no, come in.
We'll eat later!
I like donuts.
Are you seriously going to argue with me?
Donuts.
Come on, it's like 9 a.m.
Donuts. Now I was getting upset. I wanted to stay in bed, feel Sam's arms around me for a little while longer. Was that so much to ask? How could she say screw breakfast? Breakfast is the most important, nutritious meal of the day. We have 3 more hours until noon.
Oh my god, just get up already. We're burning daylight here.
And bacon. Sam and I whined, now irritated that our plans to sleep in became ultimately impossible. However, we both understood that today was a new day and we had to start preparing to take on the Demon Lord. I slowly rose and sat up in bed, yawning as Sam begrudgingly followed suit. All right, come in. They're bringing you breakfast. Man, be grateful. The door opened and in poured the Incubi brothers and their wives, carrying a plate of food for each. James and Iridessa held out their 2 extra plates for me and Sam.
Thanks, Dessa.
You're welcome, Sparky.
You are not allowed to have nicknames. Thank you, James.
Of course.
Did you notice how we're very polite, even though he loved me in another life and now he has a fancy watch? Yeah. Take some notes, Dessa and Spark Pants. James and Iridessa moved away from us as we both looked down at our plates. On it were fruit slices, bread, cheese, and some form of jerky I didn't recognize. It was, probably safe. I might die, no big deal. Sam, however, lowered his plate to his lap and looked up at his brothers.
So, what's the plan?
Take over the world.
Well, we should probably take the next couple of days to train properly. Since we're in Lilith Castle, we'll have access to training equipment.
Lilith Castle? This place has a name? The boys and Irene, Eric's wife, nodded in reply. Why would she know that? And none of the other wives. What? Why is that even special? Ugh, I'm done with these wives. Sam stuffed a stick of jerky in his mouth and I began to chew on it as Damien began to explain.
The first succubus, Lilith, was exiled here after being cast out of Eden by the heavens. She became a demon and soon began to breed more incubi and succubi than the world could control.
Wait, Lilith as in Lilith from the Bible?
Yes. During her time here, she established a kingdom with this very castle at its heart.
It's a pretty castle indeed. I've never had the pleasure of coming here.
Oh, what a lovely vacation this must be for you, darling.
Meh, I'm not really a fan of it.
Thank you, Matthew. As always, on my team. Sam swallowed the bite of jerky he had in his mouth and licked his lips, joining the conversation.
Alright, so we train until we can't anymore.
Obviously, we'll need breaks in between, but we can't afford to let a day go by without intense training. We only have a week after all.
Yeah. Worry began to bubble in the back of my mind. Everyone was willing to step up and start training, but Eric was right. We only had a week to prepare for the Demon Lord. Would we be strong enough in time?
You fear too soon, child.
Is that you, Mufasa? Huh? I straightened up my back and looked around, hearing the voice from my dream echo through the air. Everyone else looked at me curiously, wondering why I spoke up.
Wait, what?
Did you say something?
I am not crazy. I looked around at everyone, seeing their confused faces. Did they not hear the voice?
They cannot hear me, child.
Well, you should let them, so I look less crazy. I shook my head, rubbing it gently with a nervous laugh. Sorry, thought I missed something. The confusion on everyone's face, Sam is just like, oh, you're so adorable when you're nuts. The confusion on everyone's faces dissipated as everyone got back to the topic at hand, one I couldn't remember or focus on. My thoughts went back to the voice, wondering how it was speaking to me and how it knew what I was thinking.
I am closer than you imagine.
Oh, gross. Please don't be possessing me. What do you mean?
Be patient, child. The time for answers will come soon enough.
He sounds almost like Saruman from Lord of the Rings. I grew more and more concerned and confused. What was the spirit talking about? Are there any mysterious black orbs?
I am no mere spirit.
Well, excuse me, fancy pants. Then what are you?
That I cannot tell you yet. When the time comes, you will know.
Okay. That was mildly scary. A voice in my head was speaking to me, and I could only speak back in my thoughts without anyone knowing what was going on. I looked around to see everyone still speaking to each other, but I couldn't focus on what they were saying. All I could focus on was the voice in my head.
Answers will come when the time is right. For now, I will bid you farewell.
Oh, wait!
Whoa! Wait, what?
I didn't realize I spoke aloud until everyone looked to me again. I looked to Damien, wondering if he had heard everything going on in my head, but he seemed just as confused, if not more so, than the others.
You alright?
Wouldn't it get loud in his head since everyone is talking and thinking stuff in the room at the time? Let's tell him. We're not gonna Elsa it up and let it go. I sighed. They had to know what was going on. Well, I just heard this voice in my head.
Huh? A voice in your head? But I didn't hear any other voice but yours.
Oh, well, you're the expert on voices in heads, aren't you, Damien?
Did it sound like anyone you know?
I shook my head, remembering the sound of it. It was deep and echoey, masking any relatable trace from it. For all I knew, it was some sort of illusionary creation of my own mind. Then again, if I created it, then Damien would have been able to hear it. I sighed and shoved my head. What does that even mean? I sighed and rubbed my head. It was some sort of deep voice telling me to be patient and not to be afraid. It wouldn't tell me its name. I became worried about everyone thinking I was crazy. I knew I wasn't, but I definitely sounded like someone who wasn't mentally there. Sam, however, wrapped an arm around me and hugged me to his side.
Well, whoever that voice is, it's right. There's nothing to be afraid of.
I wouldn't be too sure about that just yet.
What's up, Diana, homegirl? Oh, well, I could have used that a little bit before. In my last thumbnail, I had to, go crazy with editing around Diana's floofy hair. Do you see this floofiness? It's very hard to edit around. Everyone in the room turned their heads to see Diana and Sarah standing at the door. Diana stepped further into the room, and Sarah stood at attention, watching her.
You 5 have been gone during the 10 years of this war. You do not seriously believe that you will be ready for this in a mere week. do you?
I'm pretty excellent. I made this guy fall in love with me in like 2 weeks. Diana seemed firm and serious. I could understand why, but a part of me felt a bit angry that she shut down our pep talk. Sam glared at Diana.
And if we do?
Then it is a foolish mistake.
How so?
10 years of absence can be unkind to one's abilities.
To be fair, it has only been 2 years for us.
Yeah, we punch stuff.
Regardless, when was the last time any of you actually fought in battle?
Maddox. Silence consumed the room. She was right. However, we weren't willing to give up that easily. I stood and placed my plate on the bed behind me. Why does it matter? We're going to defeat the Demon Lord either way.
We will. But there is no reason to try and breed ideas of false hope that it will be easy. Too many lives have been lost in this war, with the hope that they'll all survive. It's better to be realistic.
The tone of her voice echoed a heavy warning. No doubt she had seen hundreds or thousands of deaths in the war at first hand, but now was not the time to doubt ourselves. Yeah, seriously. Go and be negative with Sarah and cry together about your feelings. Sam stood up as well, standing at my side in defiance.
Fuck that! If you're right, then hope's the only thing we got.
Sarah stepped up to Diana's side, giving Sam a blank stare in return for his mistress.
Hope can only take you so far. Do you truly believe it will help you defeat the Demon Lord?
Why not? I felt Sam take my hand and nod, affirming his words. I smiled and squeezed his hand, agreeing. Sarah and Diana stared at us with Diana crossing her arms. Something was on Diana's mind as she stared at Sam just from looking in her eyes. What was it?
Can you say that with confidence?
I can. Want me to?
Not to derail the topic, but this is a waste of time. We should be preparing for war, not bickering about if we can or not.
A moment of silence passed through the room as Diana stared at Sam sternly. However, she was distracted, distant from the conversation, as if she was stalling time to have her thoughts wander. What was keeping her real attention?
Well, I'm not going to argue about this. Believe what you wish.
Sam and I waited and watched as Diana lowered her arms to her sides with a sigh.
However, we do have something to discuss.
Diana ran a hand through her hair and looked around the room, pressing her lips into a fine line.
So, about all of you participating in the war, you all are...
Yeah, I need to train. What would the others teach me? Don't care. Let's choose... Oh, his name is Sergeant. Should I do Sergeant or Diana? I'll do Sergeant for this playthrough, just because I talked to him earlier. Diana nodded. Sergeant was the military commander, and I could tell he was strong just from looking at him. He was my best bet in learning how to defend myself. With that, Diana turned on her heel and left the room.
Finish eating. Afterwards, you should start training.
Okay. Everyone in the room nodded their affirmation as Diana and Sarah left. Alright, let's go train. I chose to train with Sergeant. He seemed to be skilled in combat, and he was the commander of the main army, so I trusted him to train me to be strong and dependable. I didn't want to be a silent observer in this war. I would pull my own weight. Sergeant led me outside of the castle onto an empty training ground. Footprints and wear showed that the space was very well used, but the only ones in the area at the moment were Sergeant and myself. So I actually get to train outside? That's new. The air seemed fresh, and the faint smell of flowers and fauna swept past my nose. However, I didn't get time to enjoy the atmosphere.
Human, I will not waste my breath hollering at you like a soldier, but I expect you to listen like one. Now stop sniffing the air and face me.
I don't want to. I quickly nodded and turned around to face Sergeant. I pressed my arms to my sides, ready and at attention for my next order. Sergeant stared hard at me, making me slightly nervous. How was he going to train me? Sergeant began to slowly walk around my body, letting his eyes trail up and down my form in an analytical gaze. I stood still, not sure if he wanted me to follow along and knowing he would command me to move if I needed to. He remained silent, walking in circles around me like a slowly encroaching vulture. I felt a twinge of irritation at his lack of action. I was supposed to be training. Just be quiet. I had to remain calm. He was probably figuring out what I could and couldn't do based on my body type. Was it a smart thing to do rather than teach me something I might not be able to do? What wasn't smart was feeling his hand push against my back and shove me forward, making me land on my hands and knees. Are you kidding me? I got up and I punched him in the face and ripped off his other horn and I stabbed nothing. we're gonna go back. Yeah, hey! I looked back, suddenly angry at Sergeant. What was that for? I locked eyes with Sergeant to see him crossing his arms and almost smirking down at me.
So you do have some rage in you. Good.
Oh yeah, you should have heard what I said. What? Rage? Was I supposed to be angry? I quickly jumped back onto my feet and stood up, brushing myself off as I glared at Sergeant.
Rage is a form of raw energy, wild like fire and tamed with patience. If used properly, rage can be very deadly. Very few demons can harness it, but brute demons are the masters of rage.
I'm always angry. I feel a little enlightened. Rage was also a form of energy? I felt a small spark in my core, remembering how angry I was with Sergeant, and mentally noted that what I felt could be tapped into rage energy instead of what just felt like a regular emotion. Sergeant cracked his neck and let out a small sigh.
However, since you're a human, there's no guarantee that you can truly use your rage in battle. This is just a test to see what you can do.
Oh, don't be too disappointed in me, Mr. Togaface. What if I can't harness it?
Then you're shit out of luck.
Oh.
I don't have the time or patience to train you like a regular soldier human. Now is your only chance not to fuck it up.
Thank you. I gulped silently. This was my only chance to try it? It definitely seemed like a challenge, but was I really up for it? Sergeant shook his head.
Humans are really easy to read. Don't doubt yourself just yet, human. You haven't even started.
Looking up at Sergeant, I could tell that he was being genuine. Still, I wasn't sure that I was even able to do what he expected me to do. What could rage energy do anyway? I guess I would have to wait and learn. Sergeant rolled his shoulders and held out his hand, pointing at a training dummy that was set up in the middle of the field. As his hand hovered in the air, it began to slowly emanate a red aura. I stared wide-eyed as it began to grow in intensity.
Watch closely, human.
Soon a black orb formed right in front of his open palm, wrapped with a dark red lightning that seemed to arc over its surface. The orb grew larger and larger with each second that passed. As I looked over at Sergeant, I noticed his eyes were glowing a dark gold. His expression was full of anger, but his body was opposing the emotion on his face with calm and concentrated stance. When the orb finally reached the size of a basketball, Sergeant pulled his hand with the orb back behind his body and then thrust it oh, so he's doing like a Kamehameha, like with Dragon Ball Z. He's throwing energy balls. Like a lightning bolt, the orb flew forward and slammed into the training dummy, ripping it from the rod that was holding it up. However, Sergeant suddenly vanished from his spot and reappeared right in front of the flying dummy. What the? With a swift kick, Sergeant sent the dummy flying towards the surrounding forest. The unfortunate dummy slammed and nearly exploded against the base of a tree, breaking apart into pieces as it landed. I was shaking just from the sight. How did he... Sergeant landed on the ground and turned back to me, walking away from the result of his attack. He cracked his hands and rolled his head, stretching as if he was just warming up. He likes cracking things. That was... cool! Sergeant chuckled as he finally stopped walking. It was true, though. He was faster than I could catch and powerful enough to practically demolish the dummy. I was curious to see what he could do when he wasn't just training or showing off. Sergeant then pointed to a second dummy and ushered me forward.
Now, focus on your rage. You felt it already, but you need to rekindle it and capture it in your hand.
My hand? Sergeant nodded before reaching over and lifting my arm up, positioning it like how he did when he attacked the first dummy. It clicked. He wanted me to do the same thing that he did. What if I want my own fighting style, What if I want to do like a Sailor Moon tiara kind of action thing? I looked at the back of my hand, suddenly nervous. Would I be able to do the same thing he did? He was already trained in this and knew what to do. I was practically jumping into this without a life jacket. My nerves began to dance around as fear shook my core. Even still, was rage really something I wanted to try and use? It seemed like it was some sort of volatile power, dangerous and deadly if not controlled properly. More so, if I got used to my rage, would I become dependent on it? Was this something I really wanted to do? Why not? If Sergeant believed I could control it, then I had to believe him. He was the master of that kind of power, so he would know better than me. Plus, I want to be better than all the other wives, obviously. I have magical powers. A+, rank, Mika / Bumbleberry. I focused on the back of my hand, concentrated on trying to replicate Sergeant's attack. I tried imagining a black orb appearing before my palm and watching it grow, but nothing came into reality. I began to get frustrated.
Don't focus on the attack. Focus on your rage. Fuel it with reason and you will control it.
No. The burning flame in my gut began to flicker, reminding me of the anger I felt before. I quickly latched onto it, tightening my stomach and focusing on making it burn brighter. I had to fuel it somehow. Why would I think of my fiancé to give my anger? Think of the Demon Lord. I began to think about the Demon Lord. The jerk brought me here all for spite, and I was trapped here until we killed him. I was sick just from imagining his laughter, his dark voice in the air. The more he spoke, the more I wanted to end him with my own hands. I wanted to seal his fate myself and use my anger to show him who was stronger. I was forced to remain in this world, and I couldn't do anything about it until we met face to face. I wanted to go home, but my jerk-faced soon-to-be father-in-law trapped me here. The more I thought of it, the more the flame within me grew. My body became warm, and heat surged through my veins in response. Soon my vision became clouded in a ruby haze, as if I was looking into the world through foggy red goggles. However, the one thing I was able to focus on was the dummy ahead of me between my fingers, glowing in a strange black aura. Is this nice? Yeah? You like the little red sea? Was this how brute demons saw their energy? Or enemies? The energy in my body began to slowly weave into my hand, forming a baseball-shaped sized orb that quickly became bigger and bigger with each breath I took. I could hear Sergeant smirk behind me in pride. As the energy in the orb became almost too large to hold, I felt my body completely tense up and strange winds began to pick up around my body. I quickly brought the orb back down and roughly pushed it forward with my target.
Now run at it!
At his shout, I quickly stepped forward. I began to hyper-focus onto the dummy as my orb slammed into its torso and bent back over its stand. I felt enraged that I wasn't able to break it off, adding to the energy burning within my body. I wanted to kick the crap out of it. I wanted to make it bust open like a piñata. Oh my gosh, if it had candy. If I had to do it with my own foot, then I would do it over and over until it was completely decimated, like how Sergeant dealt with his own training dummy. I suddenly came face to face with it as I rushed at it. I brought my leg back and slammed it in the dummy's head, and ripping it from its torso. The head flew back a couple of feet and skidded across the ground before rolling to a stop by the foot of the tree. My fury became out of control. I found myself becoming livid at the results of my attack, causing me to pummel a flurry of punches into the remaining dummy torso, making it bounce off and slam into each impact. Ugh! My knuckles and fingers were aching from each impact as waves of pain rushed through them. I didn't give a darn, nor could I find a reason to. My mind became lost in the rage as I began to take it out on my non-living victim.
Hey!
From behind me, a pair of large arms hooked themselves up from my torso and yanked me back, not locking their hands behind my head and effectively holding my flailing and twitching arms in place. Still, the blood-red tint of the world didn't dull my anger, and my anger wasn't going away. I was pretty sure I was still foaming at the mouth, but my overwhelming fury overcame all of my senses.
Breathe, you little brute!
No! My instincts began to kick in, forcing me to take in hard and deep breaths. With each inhale, my body became racked with shivering lactic acid, and with each exhale, the flame within my core began to slowly die. After what seemed like minutes within Sergeant's arm lock, the red within my eyes vanished, and even the dribble around my lips seemed to have vanished, leaving me an aching mess of being, causing me to slightly go limp in Sergeant's arms. I'm sure Sam will find me super attractive now that I've joined the brute things. He never foams at the mouth.
There you go. Geez, you've got a lot of energy for a human.
Maybe I'm not human. Just kidding, I think. I slowly looked back at Sergeant, and he released me and stretched out one of my arms, causing my shoulder to creak and stretch out the ache within it. That's why he's always cracking stuff. The lactic acid, right? I felt a bit embarrassed at what I had done, but as Sergeant stretched my other arms, he laughed.
At least we can skip to teaching you how to control your rage.
How do I do that? I felt so out of breath as my body became overwhelmed with a dull ache, probably from me letting loose on the dummy. Sergeant gently tilted my head side to side to stretch my neck before running his knuckle over my back, working out the unknown knots in it.
Just breathe. When you're pissed, you take a step back and breathe. It's the same thing when using rage.
It seems so simple, but if it got me out of the state I was in, then it was good enough to agree with and nod to an understanding.
Everything going fine out here?
Thank you, Diana. Yes. Sergeant and I looked over to see Diana walking over to us from the castle door, crossing her arms and staring at us both.
We're good. We're just getting started.
That's good to hear. I'm on my way to the training block now to work with the troops and just wanted to stop by.
Well, thank you. As Diana nodded in turn, Sergeant suddenly stepped away from me towards her.
Succubus!
Doubting my skills as a leader already, Commander?
Yeah, why didn't he say her name? I stared wide-eyed as Diana turned her head and looked at Sergeant with a stern and almost degrading gaze. What the heck? Where did that come from? Sergeant stared right back at her, but I could very faintly see his hand glow with a soft layer of red before he closed his eyes and let it vanish with a breath. Well, I know you're planning to kill her, man. And I won't do it. I won't do it again.
No, I wasn't.
Don't care.
Then what is it?
Nothing.
Sergeant turned back to me and crossed his arms, obviously irritated at Diana, but somehow unwilling to fight her about whatever was on his mind. As Sergeant turned away from her, Diana shook her head and started to walk away.
You forget who trained the rebellion before you came around.
Diana finally left, disappearing into the forest. Sergeant, however, maintained a stoned, agitated facial expression. That was uncalled for, but it put a little perspective on things. She trained the rebellion before he came and took on the role of army commander. Sergeant shook his head.
Some training you did back then, Succubus.
What did you say? You talking smack about my girl? Sergeant? Sergeant lifted his head to look at me before letting out a sigh.
What?
Are you all right? I want to say, are we going to continue because you are a big baby face? He seemed a bit miffed, but the idea crossed out of my mind when he scoffed and shook his head.
I'm fine. Let's just get back to training.
I agree. We continued to train through the day, switching between controlling my rage and, I beat up some trees. By the end of training, I was able to do Sergeant's move, just without being able to knock the dummy off of its post. That was infuriating, but I had to remember that I wasn't going to master everything, nor was I strong enough in the first place. I was a human, and not a demon after all, let alone a brute demon. I was learning how to better defend myself. I walked into the room and let out a sigh. Today was tough, and I could tell it was only going to get that much tougher later in the week. I felt my feet slide across the floor in exhaustion, not used to the strenuous work I had to do. I sat down on the bench in front of the fireplace, staring into the flames as I let relaxation finally hit my body. The warmth of the fire gave me a dull sense of calm, causing me to sigh and lean back against the bench.
You have done well, child.
No. You again?
Fear not. I come to observe you as you observe me.
Oh, gross. How can I observe you? I tilted my head, confused as to what the voice meant. I looked around and scoured the room before turning my gaze back to the fire. Within it, I could barely make out the outline of eyes, which caused me to freeze in my spot. What is that? Oh my gosh, gross. You look like a cat. Not that there's anything gross about cats, but you are a stalker cat. PedoCat. You're the fire?
I am a flame, but I am not the fire you gaze upon. I merely look through it to judge you, and the one named Maurice.
You're judging us? Why? For what?
That will be known soon. When the time is right, the one destined to take my power will be tested.
I stared into the fire, lost and confused. Why were we being judged? Was this some sort of trick by the Demon Lord? As I thought of that, the flame intensified slightly.
The Demon Lord, an evil being of this world. He is a curse plaguing this land.
I agree. You hate the Demon Lord as well.
He is not worthy of life, but I care not enough to rise from the darkness to rid the world of him myself.
What do you mean?
I have been generous with you, child. You must now be patient.
Before I could even think to protest, the eyes hidden within the flames vanished, and the voice disappeared from my mind, as if it were part of a dream I had awoken from. I shook my head and rubbed my head, taking it in. Some sort of spirit or guardian was watching over us, and apparently it seemed to be strong enough to defeat the Demon Lord himself. Was it possible? Even more so, it was going to test one of us to take its power? Why? He wants to move on. My mind instantly went to Sam. There was no reason for me to be the one to be tested, so it had to be him. How would he be tested, though? I shook my head. This was too confusing to think about right now. However, as I, look at that, they didn't capitalize I. As I sat back and let my mind reorganize itself, I suddenly realized something. Where was Sam? I stood and walked to the door, opening it and peeking out into the hall. Sam was nowhere in sight. What the? Sam was really late in coming back. From what we had discussed, he should have been back, or at least on the way. However, the distance to the training area was not that far. I began to wander the halls, trying to find where they were. Luckily, Sam made a lot of noise.
Fuck you!
Sam? I rushed towards the noise, stopping at an open door. Peering in, I gasped as I saw the war room in disarray as everyone seemed to hug the walls, watching the chaos as it was breaking in the middle of the room. Ooh, naked fighting. Love it. Sam and Sarah were clashing sword to spear, with Sam's face full of rage and Sarah's expression void of any emotion.
You're too slow. Faster!
You want me to go faster? Fine!
Before my eyes, Sam and Sarah became barely visible through shadows through the air. Their weapons clanged rapidly, almost like multiple bullets crashing at once as they arced toward one another. What's going on? The incubi and the wives moved towards the door to join me, still watching the fight.
Sam was about to leave for the night, but then that jerk-ass Sero called him a weak coward. Well, you know how Sam is. He did actually try to walk away, but then Sero said that the war was his fault, so that got this whole shitstorm started. We've been at it ever since.
Why would this be his fault? What? I looked back at Sarah and Sam, unable to make either of them out as they clashed and fought. My eyes locked on Diana, seeing her lean against the far wall with crossed arms. As I examined her, her eyes seemed to follow the fight almost masterfully. Was she able to see what the heck was happening despite their lightning speed? Why was she just watching anyway? Sam, stop it!
Keep at it, Seto. Don't let him stop!
What, are you trying to finely tune my man? He's perfect. Do you see these curves? Do you see these muscles? Do you see that face? Although, I still kind of miss the old drawing style, like not to be grumpy. There's still shading and stuff here, but just not as much. I don't know. Maybe I'm just one of those people who complains about stuff. I apologize. Donuts are great. A+ to donuts. What the heck? I ran over to Diana despite her not taking her eyes off the fight. Why aren't you stopping this, Diana? I'm not gonna attack Diana. Wait and watch. I still wasn't understanding. Why was I not getting any answer? I turned my gaze to the fight, desperate to try and see what Diana wanted me to witness. Well, plus, I don't want to be like Sam. Like, remember when James was like, oh, can you just chill out? To Sam, and Sam was like, I'm gonna hit things first and ask questions later. I mean, maybe Sam would like that about me, but I'm not that way.
Are you that weak, Incubus? You haven't landed a blow on me once!
Shut your fucking mouth!
Like father, like son!
I didn't understand why Sarah was egging him on and insulting him, but Sam seemed up for the battle regardless of the fact and used the insults as inspirational rage. However, from the faint outline of Sam that I could see, I noticed something off about him. He was surrounded by a heavy green and red mixed aura. The more I watched, the more the aura seemed to build up and take shape around Sam's body. I couldn't tell what it was, but it looked almost alive.
Enough!
At once, Sam and Sarah slid to opposite sides of the open space, panting and gasping for air. Around Sarah was a faint white light that was diminishing with each breath he took. Around Sam, however, was a clear view of a tense red and green aura. It seemed to flicker around Sam like flames, but it didn't seem to die, even with the battle being over.
What the hell?
What is that?
Seto.
Diana pushed off the wall and walked to Sarah, wrapping an arm around his, and making him gasp at the gesture. He looked to her in shock as she turned to Sam with a hard gaze.
It would seem that we have much to do before the siege.
What are you talking about? Dana seemed to ignore my question as she turned and began to walk towards the room's exit with Sarah in her arms. Sam, on the other hand, dropped to the floor and sat back against the wall, trying to calm down. Instinctively, I rushed over to him. Sam shut his eyes and he forced himself to take deep breaths. Each one seemed less labored than the last, but I could tell he was working to calm his rage. Sam? The aura around Sam finally seemed to die down before Sam let out a heavy sigh and pressed his head against the wall. I could tell that exhaustion was weighing on him heavily, so I simply sat beside him, waiting.
Sam, what is going on?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sam, you had a weird aura around you.
I said I don't know!
Sam closed his eyes and pressed his back against the wall, letting his head drop to his chest. He genuinely didn't seem to know what was going on, but I became concerned. Why was his aura so strange? My thoughts ran to the voice from the flame. Was this the start of whatever test he had in mind? Why were Diana and Sarah involved, though? Sam finally opened his eyes and looked to me. His irises flashed gold at the sight of me, but quickly returned to their emerald green as he let out a sigh. Ask if he's okay. Just be like, hello, I love you. I needed to know if he was okay. I watched, however, as Sam let out another sigh, closed his eyes, and didn't reply. My worry increased, but soon enough Sam simply stood up. I stood as well with a frown. Sam gently took my hand and walked to lead me out of the room.
Hey, hold on!
Shut up, Squirt!
Squirt, what the hell?
Well, he's back to normal.
Matthew, hey, chill!
I looked back to see Noreen and Damien holding Matthew back from pouncing at Sam, but I continued with Sam out of the room. As we walked down the hall, I looked to Sam, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes grow heavier and heavier. He had used a lot of energy. I wrapped an arm around him and guided him back to our room, sitting in a bed and eventually flopping back onto it with me. As he let out a relaxed grunt, I kissed his cheek. Mwah! Everything okay?
Yeah. Just exhausted. Man, fuck that guard.
Yeah. Diana should do that, though. I smiled and hugged him, ushering him to wrap his arms around me and kiss my forehead.
Something really has been weird, though.
Yeah? You hearing mysterious voices? Both of us were silent as we became lost in thought. I knew Sam was trying to determine what happened, but I was concerned over what the voice in the flame had said and how that reflected on Sam. The nightmare I had made a little more sense, but why was I involved? Because you're marrying him? Because it's the stupid demon soul testing marriage thing? Sam and I went to bed that night, both unsure of what was going on and mildly fearful of what was happening. We couldn't speak about it without knowing all of the pieces. We knew better than to take stabs in the dark. My night was uneventful, but my morning wasn't the same. And we'll save that morning for next time. We've done a lot of training and beating stuff up and stabbing stuff, which has been a lot more in this playthrough than others, but it's kind of expected since Sam is, I guess, the brute. I don't know why that's his label. He's just grumpy and loud and a feisty one. Sparky. Can you believe that? That's his nickname. I like Monkey better still, but Sam seems just like as good as everything else. So what do you think the test will be? Do you think it's what I think it is, which is like if you're trying to test your marriage, you can like bind your souls together? And I'm sure that's like 8 of the bad endings where you don't work it out that way. But yeah, hope you're having a great night. See you on the next episode. Stay sweet.